She's stunning, she's smart, and let's be honest, she has options. The question isn't whether she's desirable, it's whether she'll see you as the one worth choosing. And if you think being nice is enough, you're already losing. When a woman has many options, her mind subconsciously begins to categorize. She evaluates men by what they offer, how attractive they are, how financially stable they seem, how funny, attentive, or emotionally intelligent they present themselves to be. It becomes a scale, a mental chart where men are pitted against each other. One gives her attention, the other gives her mystery. One is emotionally available, the other has charisma. She doesn't do this intentionally. It's just how the female mind assesses potential. But here's the thing, when every man is trying to fit into those categories, it becomes easy to compare them. That's when you become interchangeable. That's when she sees you as just one more guy in her inbox. The moment you try to compete on those traditional checkboxes, you enter a game where you will always lose to someone who has more money, better looks, or smoother words. But the man she ends up gravitating toward, the one she can't quite figure out how to rank, is the one who's operating outside the grid altogether. He becomes the option she can't compare because he doesn't offer the usual things in the usual ways. That kind of man is grounded. He doesn't need her interest to feel valuable. He doesn't flinch when she talks about other guys, doesn't try to outperform them, and doesn't throw his best traits on the table like he's making a sales pitch. Instead, he operates from a mindset that says, I'm not trying to be what you want. I'm here to see if you're aligned with where I'm going. That instantly disqualifies him from the pick-me pool, and it makes her pause. She notices that he's not angling for approval. He's not saying the same things other guys say. There's no visible thirst in his body language, no desperation in his compliments. And ironically, that's exactly what begins to separate him. It's not because he's doing more, it's because he's being more. Consider this scenario. A woman is being pursued by 3 men. The first is showering her with gifts. The second is deeply emotional and attentive, always checking in, always available. The third, however, is a bit harder to read. He's kind, polite, but detached in a calm way. He listens, he's present, but there's a certain stillness about him that she can't decode. He doesn't try to match her flirt for flirt. He doesn't crowd her space. He doesn't reveal everything up front. And while the first 2 make her feel good in the moment, the third one lingers in her mind. Not because he gave more, but because his presence felt rare. She can't place him, and so she starts thinking about him more. That's the power of becoming uncomparable. You stop playing the game others are losing themselves in. You stop trying to prove that you're better than the last guy. Instead, you create an energy so distinct that she has nothing to measure it against. Your values, the way you speak with intention, your pace of interaction, all feel foreign in the best way. She's used to men chasing validation. She's not used to a man who knows his value so deeply that he would walk away from anything that doesn't align. She's not used to pauses in conversation that aren't filled with anxious chatter. She's not used to a man who listens without trying to impress or win. And when you bring that, you disarm her. Not by charm, but by clarity. Being incomparable means you also don't feel the need to advertise yourself constantly. You don't brag about your achievements. You don't list your qualities like a resume. You let her discover you slowly. You let your actions speak subtly, how you carry yourself in silence, how you handle your space, how you're calm in uncertainty. That's when you trigger a deeper kind of curiosity in her. Not the surface-level interest that comes from flash, but the soul-level draw that comes from substance. She starts to ask questions in her own head. Who is he really? Why isn't he affected like the others? Why do I feel grounded when I talk to him? Why do I want to impress him when I'm used to being the one evaluated? Those questions signal a shift. Even when she tries to compare you, she won't be able to. Not because you're better in the traditional sense, but because you've made it impossible for her to use the old filters. You don't fit the mold. You're not chasing the spot. You've become the mold breaker, the reference point. And from that moment, She's no longer choosing based on who's most attractive or attentive. She's now choosing based on a feeling she hasn't felt before, a grounded, unshakable energy she can't replace. Silent confidence is the kind of power that doesn't announce itself, yet it shifts the energy in every room it enters. It's not loud, it's not flashy, and it certainly doesn't beg for attention. It's felt, not performed. And in a world where most men confuse confidence with bravado, talking over others, showing off material things, or overcompensating with jokes and gestures, the man who knows how to carry silent confidence stands out effortlessly. He doesn't need to prove his value because he is the value, and women feel that immediately. Silent confidence isn't about how much you say, it's about how deeply you believe in what you don't have to say. It's not the volume of your voice, it's the calmness of your presence that speaks louder. When you enter a space with silent confidence, you don't feel compelled to speak unless it adds value. You don't over-explain yourself, you don't react emotionally when others challenge you, and you don't feel the need to announce your worth. Instead, your posture, your eye contact, your pace of speech, and even your ability to embrace silence all work together to communicate something very few men ever learn, that you are sure of yourself with or without external validation. And that is a deeply magnetic quality, especially to women who are constantly being pursued by men trying to earn points through performance. Silent confidence puts her at ease and piques her curiosity all at once. She'll find herself wondering what makes you so grounded, why you're so unmoved, and what inner security allows you to not try so hard. Imagine a man named Adil. He's out at a gathering where there are plenty of attractive men, some with luxury watches, loud laughs, and charismatic banter. These men command attention in the usual ways: big personalities, bold jokes, and animated body language. Adil, on the other hand, stands with his back straight, hands relaxed, face composed. He makes brief but steady eye contact. When someone speaks to him, he listens fully and responds with thoughtful brevity. He doesn't rush to make people laugh, doesn't dominate the conversation, and doesn't flex his job title or talk about how well he's doing in life. But the room notices him, not because he demanded attention, but because his restraint becomes a mirror for everyone else's noise. People start lowering their volume around him without knowing why. He becomes a silent center of gravity. Now, among the people in this gathering is a woman who is used to men trying too hard to impress her. She gets compliments regularly. She's offered drinks, attention, and stories meant to showcase the best versions of the men around her. But when she locks eyes with Adil, something is different. He doesn't rush to initiate conversation. He acknowledges her with a simple nod and nothing more. She's intrigued. When they finally do speak, he doesn't pepper her with questions like an eager suitor. He listens, pauses, and speaks only when he has something meaningful to contribute. He doesn't fill the silence. He lets it breathe. And suddenly she feels like he is the one who needs to be impressed, not the other way around. This is what silent confidence does. It flips the script without saying a word. It creates an invisible aura of leadership, stability, and inner strength. It tells people you've seen enough, done enough, and are enough with or without applause. And here's the key: silent confidence doesn't come from arrogance. It's not about thinking you're better than others. It's about no longer needing anyone else to tell you who you are. When a man reaches that place within himself, everything about him becomes more attractive. His stillness, his speech, his decisions, even the way he holds his coffee cup, because it's all rooted in intention, not impulse. Women are intuitive. They may not always articulate what they're sensing, but they feel it in their bodies. A man with silent confidence makes them feel safe without trying. He doesn't spike their dopamine. He calms their nervous system. He's the one who doesn't flinch when they test him, the one who can listen to her recount stories about other guys and not blink, because his value isn't threatened by external competition, and the one who can maintain his frame even when she pulls away emotionally, because he doesn't chase approval, he attracts alignment. That kind of presence isn't built overnight. It comes from years of inner work, solitude, owning your failures, and learning how to move in a world that thrives on noise without becoming part of it. But once mastered, it becomes a lifelong advantage. In the modern world of dating, most men are stuck in performance mode. They believe they must say the right things, make her laugh at the perfect moments, tell stories that highlight their success, and act in ways they think women want. They're constantly doing, constantly adjusting, constantly monitoring her reactions to make sure they're being enough. But what they don't realize is that this performative energy is transparent. Women can sense it, even if they can't always articulate it. It feels like something's off, like they're interacting with a carefully curated version of a man, not the actual man himself. And that's why women often feel emotionally exhausted after dates with guys who seem like they did everything right, because what's missing isn't effort, it's presence. Presence is not about what you do. It's about who you are when you're with her. It's how fully you show up, not just physically, but emotionally and energetically. When a man is truly present, he's not trying to manipulate a response or angle toward approval. He's grounded, he's in the moment, he listens without interrupting, and when he speaks, it's with a calm certainty that comes from within. He doesn't need to be clever or charming. His stillness is magnetic. His eye contact is intentional, and his silence doesn't feel awkward. It feels safe. He's not trying to guide the moment toward a specific outcome. He's simply experiencing it, fully. And that quality is rare. Imagine a guy named Samir. Samir goes on a date with a woman who is used to attention, used to compliments, and used to men trying to outshine one another. The last 3 guys she dated tried to impress her with expensive dinners, overly rehearsed stories, and endless validation. But Samir shows up differently. He's casually dressed, but well put together. He greets her with calm energy, not rushed, not overly excited. He doesn't start the night with a flood of flattery. He simply looks at her with genuine interest and says, "How's your day been, really?" And then he listens, not to respond quickly, but to actually hear her. As she talks, she notices he's not on his phone. He's not scanning the room. He's not interrupting or jumping in with his own stories to compete with hers. He's locked in. She pauses to test the silence, expecting him to fill the gap, but he doesn't. He just maintains comfortable eye contact, nods slightly, and gives her space to express herself. There's no show being performed, no strategy playing out, just presence. And that disarms her. Because she's used to being entertained, but this feels different. This feels honest. This is what happens when a man drops the performance and instead occupies the moment. Women don't need fireworks to feel something real. They just need to feel that the man in front of them isn't playing a role. When your energy is rooted in your own sense of peace, when you're not trying to earn points with every sentence, you create a dynamic where she can finally relax. That's the shift. She stops evaluating and starts experiencing. And in that space, genuine connection can happen. Presence also means you're not reactive. When she shares something vulnerable, you don't jump to fix it. When she says something provocative, you don't get defensive. When she tests you with silence or sarcasm, you stay grounded. You don't perform for her approval, and you don't retreat in the face of her uncertainty. You're just there, solid, unmoved. And that kind of masculine energy is like a balm in a world where everyone is performing, competing, or projecting their insecurities. Women remember presence more than performance. They remember how you made them feel in the moment, not what you said. They remember the way your energy stayed calm when things got awkward. They remember the feeling of being heard, of being seen, of being in the company of someone who wasn't trying to entertain them, but was simply offering his full attention without needing anything in return. And that becomes a reference point. Because once a woman experiences a man who can hold space without trying to fill it with noise, she starts to crave that energy. Performance always fades. It exhausts both parties, and it's rarely sustainable. But presence lingers. It resonates in her body long after the conversation ends. It's not flashy, but it's unforgettable. Because when a man is truly present, he gives her the gift of feeling like she can finally drop the performance too. And in that mutual stillness, something deeper is awakened, something real, something rare, something that no amount of effort can replicate. One of the most common mistakes men make when dealing with a woman who has options is that they subconsciously step into the mindset of offering themselves. They take on the role of the salesman, highlighting their traits, demonstrating their loyalty, advertising their potential as a boyfriend, and trying to outshine the competition by proving why they're the better choice. And in doing so, they lower their value without realizing it, because the moment you offer yourself like a product waiting to be picked, you hand over your power. You enter a psychological frame where she is the buyer and you are the commodity. That may seem romantic to some, but in truth, it communicates a lack of personal standard and selective discernment. When you offer yourself, what you're saying underneath is, please choose me. I'm available. I'm ready to adapt to what you want. And nothing drains attraction faster than a man who is overly eager to be chosen by someone he hasn't even fully evaluated himself. Positioning yourself, on the other hand, is a whole different energy. It means you know your worth and you move in alignment with it. It's not arrogance, it's clarity. You're not chasing attention or trying to gain favor. You're showing up in your life with intention, direction, and values that aren't up for negotiation. You're not walking into her life asking, what do I need to be to impress you? You're walking in thinking, let's see if your energy aligns with mine. That subtle shift in mindset changes everything. It's the difference between auditioning for a role and being the producer of your own movie. She may still be beautiful, intelligent, charming, and accomplished, but now she's not just evaluating you. She's hoping she meets the bar you've quietly set. Take, for example, a man named Rayyan. He meets a woman through mutual friends. She's clearly popular, and it's obvious that a few guys in their circle have already expressed interest in her. One guy brings her coffee every time they meet. Another constantly compliments her and checks in on her throughout the day. These men are offering themselves, hoping their consistency and visibility will earn her affection. Rayyan, however, plays it differently. He speaks with her briefly, maintains strong eye contact, smiles genuinely, and then moves on with his evening. He doesn't linger. He doesn't try to impress. He doesn't fish for approval. He's warm but detached, present but not invested. He doesn't offer himself. He simply is. And by doing so, he's positioned himself as a man of value who doesn't need to sell his worth. She notices. She begins to wonder. A few interactions later, Rayyan engages her in a more meaningful conversation. When she brings up her past relationships and casually mentions her long list of admirers, he doesn't flinch. He listens, then calmly says something like, "I'm not surprised. You seem like someone who's used to getting attention." Then he shifts the topic. He doesn't get reactive, he doesn't compete, and most importantly, he doesn't start trying to match or exceed those past admirers. Why? Because his sense of self isn't based on how impressed she is. His presence alone carries the message, "I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to connect with you, if it fits." That energy is what makes her curious. Now, she's not wondering if he's good enough. She's wondering if she is. This is what positioning does. It frames the interaction in a way that subtly communicates standards. It doesn't require you to say, "I only date high-value women," or "I won't tolerate certain behaviors." It shows in how you respond, in how much access you give, and in how you move. A man who positions himself well will never chase. He'll pursue if the connection makes sense, but he'll never need to convince. He's not emotionally dependent on her reaction. He's not swayed by momentary interest or temporary beauty. His internal compass is stronger than his desire to be accepted. And that's rare. Women are deeply intuitive when it comes to energy. They know when a man is trying too hard. They can sense when you're adjusting yourself to appear more agreeable. but they also feel it in their body when a man is fully rooted in who he is. It doesn't mean he's rigid. It means he's calibrated. He doesn't lose his center in the presence of beauty. He doesn't get distracted by attention. He doesn't become submissive just because he's intrigued. Positioning yourself also means you have a strong life outside of her. You're building something meaningful. You're not waiting to be chosen. You're selecting based on alignment. Your world is already full, and anyone who enters it must add to that fullness, not define it. When you carry yourself like this, she feels the difference. She's not being chased, she's being invited, and she knows the invitation won't stay open forever. In today's dating landscape, where short attention spans dominate and instant gratification is the standard, most men unknowingly condition themselves to pursue women by triggering dopamine. It's the quick laugh, the well-timed compliment, the flirtatious text, the Instagram-like energy that gives a spike of attention, then fades just as fast. They become entertainers, fun, stimulating, exciting, but easily forgotten. That's because dopamine is chemical candy. It hits fast, but it never lingers, and when the effects wear off, the woman feels nothing but a strange emptiness where connection should have been. If your goal is to impress her for the night, dopamine works. But if your intention is to be unforgettable, to exist in her emotional memory long after you've left, then you need to bypass dopamine and trigger depth. Because depth is not about saying deep things. It's about creating a space where she can feel deeply, and in a world full of men performing, that's the most potent kind of presence you can offer. Triggering depth means you move past the surface-level tactics and into something that resonates on a psychological and emotional level. You're not chasing a momentary spark. You're holding a frequency that invites openness, safety, introspection, and genuine curiosity. And women feel this immediately. It shows in how you listen, not just to respond, but to understand. It shows in how you ask questions, not to fill the silence, but to explore who she really is beneath the layers of her everyday mask. It shows in your restraint, how you don't rush intimacy, don't force conversations, and don't chase closeness through performance. Depth is not about showing how profound you are. It's about creating a container where she can relax into her full self. And that's where real connection grows. Picture a man named Zion. He's meeting a woman named Amira for coffee. She's used to fast-paced men, guys who rush in with compliments, brag about their lifestyle, and ask basic surface-level questions. So, what do? Where are you from? Any siblings? The same script on repeat, but Zion moves differently. When he speaks, his voice is low and slow, not because he's trying to be seductive, but because he's genuinely relaxed. He's not performing, he's present. When Amira answers a question, he doesn't jump to the next one. He pauses, lets her words land, and then follows up with something that shows he actually heard her. If she says she's in marketing, he doesn't ask about her job title. He asks what drew her to that world in the first place. If she mentions she recently ended a relationship, he doesn't gossip or pry. He simply nods and says, "I'm glad you honored your intuition." That one sentence tells her he's not like the others. It shows emotional intelligence, a sense of values, and subtle validation of her deeper self. Depth is also found in how you handle silence. While most men panic and rush to fill the gaps, a man who operates from depth respects silence. He's not uncomfortable in stillness because he doesn't need noise to feel worthy. That calm, grounded energy gives her space to breathe, space to reflect, to feel, to open up without being interrogated. In fact, many women speak more in silence than in conversation, and a man who understands that doesn't interrupt it. He observes, stays grounded, and lets the moment unfold naturally. And the more he holds that space, the more she associates him with something sacred, not a spike of attention, but a source of emotional oxygen. Depth also shows in how you touch her energy, not just her body. Instead of rushing into flirtation or trying to escalate physical intimacy, the man who triggers depth lets emotional intimacy grow first. He doesn't try to entertain her. He wants to understand her. He notices how her eyes shift when she talks about her childhood, or how her energy dips when she mentions a challenge at work. He mirrors her energy without overpowering it. And when he speaks about himself, he doesn't posture, he shares with honesty, maybe even reveals a moment of weakness, not to gain sympathy but to show that he's human. That kind of vulnerability doesn't weaken him, it deepens trust. And when a woman feels emotionally safe with a man, she naturally wants to be physically close to him. Not because he triggered desire through charm, but because he triggered a sense of inner alignment. Triggering depth also means you're not easily shaken. You're emotionally composed, not reactive. When she tests your boundaries or flirts with chaos, you don't spiral or submit. You hold firm, you reflect her energy with clarity, and you don't fall into patterns of neediness or validation seeking. That consistency creates emotional structure, and women crave that structure more than they admit. It's not control, it's containment. And when your masculine energy can hold space for her feminine complexity without trying to fix, judge, or rush it, she feels seen on a level that dopamine chasers could never reach. Depth lingers where performance fades. Depth stays in her system. It gets under her skin, settles into her bones, and speaks to the part of her that's not just looking for excitement, but for peace, for connection, for something real. When a man knows exactly who he is, where he's going, and what he stands for, he becomes incredibly attractive. Not because he's loud about it, but because clarity is magnetic in a world of confusion. Most men try to attract women by offering them excitement, attention, or validation. They flood her with compliments, over-communicate, make their intentions obvious, and try to secure her affection by being endlessly available. But what they don't realize is that this over-accessibility removes any sense of mystery, tension, or emotional pursuit. When everything is handed to a woman up front, there's nothing left for her to explore. There's no psychological space for curiosity to build, and curiosity is what drives emotional investment. A man who is constantly explaining himself, constantly proving himself, or constantly reacting to her energy is a man who has no center of gravity. But the man who is deeply clear about his values, his rhythm, his preferences, his emotional limits, and the pace at which he moves, makes a woman chase clarity within him. Not because he withholds to manipulate, but because he's selective about how much of himself he gives away. Letting her chase clarity doesn't mean playing games or being distant for the sake of strategy. It means you're not in a rush to be fully known, especially by someone who hasn't earned access to your internal world yet. It means your words are measured, your actions are intentional, and your energy is not available for free. You operate from purpose, and that purpose naturally filters your interactions. She doesn't get to know all of you just because she's pretty, funny, or interesting. She gets to know the parts of you that align with the version of her that shows up with consistency, respect, and depth. And that makes her stop and ask, who is this man? Why can't I read him fully? What makes him so composed? What does he actually want? Those questions are not signs of confusion. They're signs of rising emotional investment. Imagine a man named Hamza. He's not the loudest in the room, but he commands presence. When he speaks, people pause. He doesn't engage in gossip, he doesn't follow the crowd, and he doesn't entertain surface-level drama. He keeps his circle small, and he moves with an unshakable rhythm. He meets a woman who's used to men making their intentions loud and clear within the first hour of conversation. They usually ask her out within minutes, send good morning texts religiously, and throw all their emotional cards on the table before she even decides if she wants to play. But Hamza moves differently. He listens more than he talks. When she asks what he's looking for, he doesn't give a rehearsed answer. He simply says, "I know it when I feel it." That one sentence leaves her wondering. She can't pin him down. He didn't give her a full blueprint, just a glimpse, and now she wants more. The next few conversations are equally balanced. He shares when it makes sense. He's kind, but not overly familiar. He compliments her, but it's never forced. When she pulls back, he doesn't chase. When she leans in, he doesn't smother. He's not trying to be unpredictable. He's just not emotionally needy. She starts to lean in further, not because he promised her something, but because he left space for her to pursue understanding. She wants to know his story, his past, his values. She's invested, not because he tried to impress her, but because he gave her just enough to ignite the chase for clarity. This kind of masculine energy is powerful because it's calm. It doesn't make noise to get noticed. It simply is, and that presence becomes an anchor. Most men are constantly changing shape to meet a woman's expectations, but the man who lets her chase clarity doesn't bend. He doesn't overcorrect. He doesn't shift to match her energy when it's erratic. He stays consistent in his tone, his tempo, and his focus. That consistency sends a signal to her nervous system. This man doesn't need me to like him in order to stay in his truth, and that, ironically, makes her want to be liked by him. When a woman can't immediately figure a man out, but she feels emotionally safe around him, it creates an irresistible tension. She's not chasing a title, a relationship status, or a romantic fantasy. She's chasing the core of who he is. She wants to understand his mind, his emotional triggers, his unspoken standards. She wants to know what would make him commit, what would make him choose. Because now it's not about whether he's choosing her, it's about whether she'll be chosen by someone she respects. That switch is everything, and it doesn't happen through showing off or grand gestures. It happens when a man owns himself so fully that the mystery isn't in what he's hiding, but in how deeply he's grounded in the parts of himself he doesn't offer to just anyone. Women don't just want to feel desired. They want to feel drawn in by something they can't quite name. That's what happens when you let her chase clarity. So, if she has options, let her. That's not your concern. Your concern is who you are becoming, not in reaction to her attention, but in alignment with your own value. You don't compete, you don't chase, and you don't perform. You position. You become the option she can't compare. You carry silent confidence that doesn't beg to be seen. You choose presence over performance, trigger depth over cheap dopamine, and you let her chase not your approval, but the clarity of your being. Because when you truly know your worth, the right woman doesn't just choose you. She realizes you were never an option. You were the standard.